Before we get started, a note from the author. Workaway is an organization that enables people to volunteer abroad to help others in need in exchange for food and shelter. Most often than not, people on a workaway decide to help others abroad to travel to exotic places. And people that hire workaway volunteers are often families, couples, or elderly people that are too busy for the basic chores and therefore decide to shelter workaway volunteers to take care of these basic chores. This means that complete strangers, aka the workaway volunteer and the host, will be living together for an extended period of time. This is where things go a little south. For context, I'm 18, and this happened to me a couple of months ago. It was my first time doing a workaway, and after 2 days of trying it out, I am 100% sure that I don't ever want to do it again. It was one of the most traumatizing events of my life that I'll remember until the day I die. Also, I'm female, and for context's sake, I've always received compliments on my body ever since I hit puberty, so I'd say I'm definitely on the attractive side. Not to say it's always been rainbows and sunshine for me on an emotional level. One day, while browsing on Workaway, I received a direct message from an offer of an elderly couple that needed help with gardening chores. The account that messaged me had its first name as Enzo, so I assumed that the husband was hiring the Workaway volunteers. Upon inspecting this profile picture, though, I realized that the selfie of him was with a much younger woman, maybe in her early 20s. She wasn't even smiling, and it didn't look like she was even acknowledging that she was in the guy's selfie. I don't think too much of it, and read their description. Couple looking for some gardening help. Very beautiful view of the ocean. Looking for young and strong workaways to help. Don't forget that swimsuit. The smiley face made it a little creepy, but I probably thought the guy was old and just trying to be funny. They had pictures of the house that made it seem like a charming one, with a pool and a nice view of the beach. It looked like paradise and had a pretty good rating, so I accepted. All of it was in the south of Italy, and looked to be overall a really nice place to stay. All in all, I was pretty excited. Fast forward, and I arrived at the place. It's kind of like in the pictures, except for the garden is totally ran down, as if somebody had destroyed it. I get introduced to Enzo first. He's poorly dressed, and I immediately notice he's a little socially awkward, but I think it's just because he can barely express himself in English. I ask him where his wife is, to which he responds, she died about a week ago because of cancer. On the spot, I'm immediately heartbroken and give him my condolences, though I'm a little skeptical because you don't just die of cancer in your 20s. Maybe they broke up, and he just didn't want to admit it. He was definitely lying about something. As I'm saying I'm sorry for his loss, he looks down as if he was crying. So I awkwardly, not really out of sympathy, decide to give him a hug. While we're hugging though, I notice his hands are a little low my back, barely touching my butt. I was wearing a sundress, so I really felt it. I didn't think too much of it, and I brushed it off because he was old and rather short. But this was the first red flag for me. We go inside, and he starts showing me around the house. He keeps telling me that there's a pool in the garden if I want to swim. He tells me this about 3 times, and it's getting on my nerves. He shows me to my room, and it's a big room with a view of the backyard pool and the beach. He had showed me his room, which had the same view. Once in my room, though, he also mentioned that there are mice in the attic above the room that sometimes make noise at night. I tell him, "Oh, really?" And he doesn't answer. I awkwardly look out the window, and after a long awkward pause of me looking outside the window and turning back to him to compliment the view, he leaves the room without saying anything. I thought maybe he didn't hear me. The next day, I'm working on the garden, cutting bushes and watering the plants, while he's out on the porch behind me laying down and taking a nap. Or I thought so. It was pretty hot that day, so I was wearing a bikini and a baggy old shirt on top. While I'm bending over to water some smaller plants in the back, I can't help but notice his eyes are open, looking right at me. I'm not sure that he's watching me though, so I decide to water the plants next to him and pretend I think he's sleeping. I bend over and pretend I'm picking up something from the soil. I'm aware that my breasts are more or less half exposed through the baggy shirt I was wearing. I quickly glance in his direction and see that his old eyes are wide open and locked on my breasts. I'm a little disgusted, and I stand up and walk towards the side of the house where he can't see me. A couple of moments after that, he goes back inside. I start to get a little suspicious about this guy, but I really couldn't blame him. After all, his wife was allegedly dead. or broken up. It wasn't the first time a guy had looked at me like that. I take this as a second red flag, though. On the second day, Enzo had given me permission to take the day off, so I decided to wander to the beach. It was fun and especially beautiful, but it was a little sunny, so I decided to go back to the backyard near the pool and under the shade trees. When I came back, Enzo was walking towards me with swimming goggles in his hand. Suddenly, he tells me that there's small rocks in the pool that I should pick up, because he's too old to go into that deep water. That's when I thought it was a little odd. Firstly, who has small rocks not so randomly scattered in their pool floor? And second, who owns a pool and doesn't have a perch to get small leaves and insects out of the water? But, put on the spot, I decided to do the job. I was also already in my swimsuit, so why should I not do it? I put on the goggles, go inside the water, and pick up the rocks. While I'm doing this, he's standing there just watching me do it. In the water, I faintly hear the iPhone's recording sound. While going back up out of the water after picking up the last rock, though, I noticed him on his phone for the first time. He was holding it in the water with both hands as he was zooming in on me. It was just too obvious. I tell him I'm done and ask him if that's his iPhone. He replies that he's using the zoom in the water because it's waterproof and he can use it to see the rocks in the water. I told him it was a great idea, though I didn't believe it one bit. This was the third red flag, and right then and there I made up my mind to leave early because I don't feel safe with this guy. I ask him for a towel since I forgot one, and he quickly jerks away to get one in the house. While I look at the sea in front of me, I wait a good 5 minutes before he hands me a towel. That's when I suspected he was most likely watching me from the upstairs window before actually getting a towel. I dry myself off and get to my room to take a nap because I was exhausted. Once in my room, though, I looked for possible hidden cameras because I started to doubt Enzo. Fortunately, I found nothing, so I locked my door and took a shower and went to sleep. I wake up around 7, and for some reason, I can't find Enzo anywhere in the house. It's dinner time, so I just decided to start cooking. I call him out for dinner, and he finally shows up. I ask him where he was, to which he responds that he was in his room. Again, this was a complete lie, since I walked past his empty room on several occasions. We had dinner, and he kept telling me it was good. I kept telling him, with everything that's left in me, that I was flattered, to which he responds in an old creepy smile. That night I had some trouble falling asleep. I had obviously locked my door, and thus felt safe, but it was an unusually hot summer night. Before coming here, I had this habit of sleeping naked, which I stopped doing once I came here for obvious reasons. I opened the windows to get some fresh air, but that still didn't help. So I subsided to old habits and decided to take off my pajamas to sleep naked. I instantly fell asleep after that. I awoke around 3 a.m. to some noises coming from the ceiling. It was like faint old wood cracking. I opened my eyes and looked at the ceiling above me. That's when, in the dark, between the planks, I faintly see a set of eyes looking at me. I lock eye contact with Enzo, who is in the fucking attic. And I get in full panic mode, but I'm paralyzed with fear, so I don't move. I pretend I'm looking at the left side of the ceiling and then close my eyes. My breasts are completely exposed to this creep, so I decide to turn over to my side and move up the blanket to cover it up. For the rest of the night, I'm too scared to open my eyes or to move, so I just stay there paralyzed in fear until some sunlight reaches me. Morning came, and I was more than ready to get out of this hell house. When it was about 6 in the morning, I packed my stuff and left the house running. I waited at the train station to get to the nearest airport. Thank God I came out unharmed. That guy was a twisted and seriously sick pervert. I am a female, now 34. So this happened when I was around 6, maybe even 7. It's been decades, so my memory of my age is a little off. But the memory of that night has never left and is burned into my brain. We lived in townhomes in a small town just 45 minutes east of Baltimore, Maryland, called Edgewood. I am now living in Oklahoma and have been since I was 15. Our neighborhood had several townhomes. Can't really say how many, but the estimate is several hundred. It was the 90s, so we were the free-range generation. As long as we were home when the streetlights came on. All the kids knew all the kids, so we had a big group we always hung out with. Whether it be riding bikes, skating, even play pretend like Power Rangers. There was a crew of maintenance men. Some were really friendly, some were just super quiet. One guy had kids that went to my school, but I didn't know them. I always saw him with his kids at the school, but he never smiled and never really interacted with anyone. I always had this weird feeling from him. I can't remember the season or the month. I know it must have been the end of summer or coming into summer because my mom liked opening the windows and the back sliding door during these times of seasons. It was nighttime, and like every weeknight, we sit down with my mom to watch an episode of Roseanne. We loved this time with her. Our townhome setup was, right when you walk in the front door was the steps leading up to the second story, and our living room was to the right. If you walk straight, you come to a small hallway with a bathroom on the left, and then the entrance to our kitchen that's separated from our living room with a big wall. That night, we sit to watch our show. I told my mom I was thirsty and wanted some of her soda. So of course, she told me if I wanted to get some, get my own cup. I headed to the kitchen and looked at the backyard where our sliding door was located. I kept walking to the cabinets and realized I can't reach them, so I climbed up and grabbed a cup. That's when I heard a noise that sent me into a freeze state. I turned around really fast and saw no one. I hurried down the counter and ran to my mom. "Mom, something made a big crash noise outside." She told me, "It must be the neighbor doing something. Just go grab a cup." I took her word and went out for the second time. As I climbed the cabinet for the second time, I felt someone watching me. As a 6 or 7-year-old, you're not that observant, so I hopped down and went to the back sliding door. I turned around for a second to look at the cabinets, wondering if I could get back up to where the cup was. When I turned back around to look out, maybe to see a dog or our neighbor doing something, there he was, the maintenance man, standing there, just looking at me. I caught eye contact with him and froze. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I reached for the sliding door, he would stop me. If I scream, he will reach in for me. That's all that was separating us was the thin screen piece of our sliding door. I smelled alcohol on him. He smelled bad. But it doesn't end there. When I looked down, he was only wearing a shirt. Nothing else. Not even underwear. No socks. No shoes. Just a half-cut gray shirt. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Finally, something kicked in me, and I just bolted to my mom, and I was crying and screaming. "There's a man! There's a man, Mom!" She jumped up faster than I'd ever seen her move and ran to the back. She looked around for a few minutes and slammed it shut and locked it. She came back, and she said she saw no one. I told her that he was there. She told me that he's gone now, and she will let my dad know what happened. I slept a little less that night, still having the image in my head. The next day, my friend and I were out back, and I told her about the man. That's when we noticed every single backyard had one broken beer bottle on their porches. Even mine. We went near the tree that sits about 30 yards from our back porch and saw beer bottles. He must have been watching me for a bit standing near the tree. At night, you can't see the tree. That's what makes this experience so terrifying. How long has he been watching me? How long has he had an eye on me? Was he just drunk and confused? I'm so thankful nothing had happened to me that night. But to this day, I question why I didn't tell my mom the full story of him being naked. Why didn't I tell them he was the maintenance man who worked and continued to work there? I'm a mom now, and I'm still afraid of back doors.